Have you ever heard of the phrase, caught in the storms of life? It means having to deal with something really difficult in your life, something that's challenging and hard. It might leave your emotions feeling a little bit bruised and a little bit battered. It might make you cry and leave you feeling a little bit sad. It happens to everyone at some point in their lives. It might be an illness, or moving house, or parents getting divorced, or being bullied, or a friend dying, or taking exams, even having to stay at home because of COVID-19. But there is another phrase that you might have heard of. After the storm comes the rainbow. We've certainly seen lots of rainbows around recently, haven't we? Now, there's a man in the Bible who knew a lot about storms, but this was real storms. But he knew there was a promise of hope, like a rainbow, at the end of it. And how did he know? Because he knew God. I'm going to read you his story from the Lion Storyteller Bible. His name was Paul. You've probably heard of him. He used to hate Christians, people who followed Jesus, and then he met Jesus for himself, and he decided that Jesus was so amazing, he wanted to tell as many people as possible he could about him. Now, city after city, mile after mile, year after year, Paul travelled far and wide, facing danger every day, just so that people could hear about Jesus. Was Paul worried? Not at all. In every city he visited, he left behind a little church, a group of people who wanted to live like Jesus. But then Paul went to Jerusalem, and that's where he ran into big trouble. The religious leaders didn't like it when Paul said that Jesus was the special one that God had promised. The religious leaders were angry when he said that Jesus really had come back from the dead. And at last, the religious leaders arrested him and beat him. Some people even wanted to kill Paul, but in the end he was put in chains and sent to Rome to go on trial before the emperor himself. Was Paul worried? Not at all. He knew that God had said Paul would go to Rome and tell people there about Jesus. And now he was on his way. Paul was put in a ship with other prisoners, and at first the journey went well. But then the wind changed. The ship slowed down, and by the time it reached Crete, it was running late. Was Paul worried? No, not at all. He knew that it wasn't a good time of year to sail, and if the ship stayed in Crete, everything would be okay. And that's what he told the men in charge. But they didn't want to wait. So off they sailed across the choppy sea. It didn't take long for Paul's warning to come true. A hurricane blew up, and the boat was blown like a toy across the water. The sailors did everything they could. They dropped the anchor, they threw the cargo overboard, they held the battered boat together with ropes. But the storm went on until all the food had run out, and it looked like everyone was going to die. Was Paul worried? No, not at all. He knew that God would keep them safe. Calmly he stood and he spoke to the others. I had a visit last night from an angel, he told them. He told me that it would get us to Rome safely. The ship would be destroyed, run aground on an island, but we would all survive. And that's just what happened. The ship was wrecked off the island of Malta. At first, the soldiers and sailors thought only of themselves. But Paul convinced the men in charge that the angel's promise would come true if everyone stuck together. So that's what they did, and everyone was saved. The people who lived on the island took care of the castaways, and after 3 months they joined another ship sailing to Rome. In that big city, Paul had to stay in his house until the trial. So while he waited, he told everyone who visited him about Jesus. Was Paul worried about what would happen to him? Not at all. Instead, he was busy writing letters to the churches that he'd started all over the world. And in one letter he said, "Don't be worried. Just be thankful and tell God what you need. Jesus will give you the peace of God, and that will help you face anything." Knowing that God was with him and was helping him through the storm gave Paul the courage that he needed. And it reminds me of a very special verse in the Bible. Now, I've had my own storm to deal with over the past couple of months. I was pregnant, and I was told that my baby was going to be born poorly. He was going to need to stay in hospital for a little while. And it was going to be a really hard time for him and for us as a family. Now, when he was born, we obviously needed to give him a name. And as I say, there's a very special verse in the Bible. And when I read it, we couldn't help but call him Joshua. Now, in the book of Joshua in the Bible, God says this to Joshua. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Now, we could have been really afraid. We knew that we were going to go through a really, really tough storm with Joshua. Now, incredibly, Joshua's safe at home with us now. It's amazing. But I don't think I've told you the full story. See, Joshua 1 verse 9 doesn't just say, be strong and courageous, don't be afraid. It also says this, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We needed to trust and have faith that God was going to be with us, giving us strength and courage. Paul needed to trust that God was going to be with him wherever he went, giving him strength and courage. And you can be certain that whatever storms you might be going through in life, God is there. He can give you the strength and the courage. And do you know why he's there for you? Because God, he loves you.